Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is a special Religious Liberty, Public Affairs, Religious Liberty broadcast for today. I am welcoming in a guest to the show, and this is titled A Conversation with an Activist, and wanted to bring them on to share what's happening in the trenches and to gain a different perspective of what is happening in the world at large. So what I'll do is I'm going to open with prayer, and then we will go into the introduction and go from there. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for life, health, and strength. I pray that those who will listen and tune in to the Periscope for today and the YouTube at any other time, they will gain an understanding, they will be enlightened, and they will walk away seeing things more than what they see currently, and they will take those things with them, and they will either seek you or they will take those and utilize them in their lives as they see fit. But we thank you for this in the holy and precious name of Jesus. All right, so what I will do is, and I know those will be coming on and let me know if our sound is good, but my guests will remain anonymous, yet they will give a little bit about themselves as they feel comfortable, and then we will just go from there as we normally do.
Excellent.
All right. So I turn it over to you.
My name is Stu. I am a former Seventh-day Adventist. I have regional conference Seventh-day Adventist roots. I am a ex-Pathfinder, Temperance Rally, Federation, elementary school, academy grad, Pathfinder kind of Seventh-day Adventist, born in the 70s. I've had a fascinating life experience. Spent several years, 10 or more years in the Air Force, spent another 9 years working as a contractor in the intelligence community. And I've spent the past 10 years or so working in communities and working to develop strategies to develop communities. Today I identify religiously as an atheist. However, your roots are your roots. Mm-hmm. And in my observation of the society today, I observe some very serious problems.
Yes.
Some problems that are going to require corporate addressing in one fashion or another. And I think the space where you and I have been having our dialogue and where we should continue to have our dialogue is in the space that says, is this organization doing what it should be doing in the present time to meet its the present need.
The present need.
The present need.
So this is where I say, as one who is still a Seventh-day Adventist and believe in the Bible and those things, I would call it speaking present truth,
Okay.
To the present time that we are in, and looking at how what is happening in the world at this present time is more, and that there's an organic nature to it. If you just looked at the media, you would think that it's just an outcry because of one incident or a few, but not understanding it's more deep-seated, and it's more than that. And I personally may not agree with, say, directions that some people are taking. I'm saying within the organization I belong to, is because there is a process that can be done to meet the need in the community.
Okay.
Much like, you talk about being in the military, so we share a similar experience of being veterans. The Air Force has a way of going about its mission.
Sure.
That mission being by air, different than the Navy's mission. So the Navy has planes, but it's primarily ship based. So the two don't, if you're needing air coverage, you're calling one. If you're
Right.
needing to move people across waters, you don't really so much maybe calling on the Air Force. You're calling on the Navy.
Right.
Therefore, it is the thought pattern that if you know your role, then in turn you will meet the community's need based on that. And as you were saying with your history, knowing the Pathfinders, knowing the other auxiliaries of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the community service, which used to be called the Dorcas Society, and those
Sure.
things, they have tools equipped to meet the need that of individuals who have cried out and said, "We are upset, we are frustrated, we're frustrated with the not be having our voice," but yet there are, even after all this is I'll say not done, but there's still those needs need to be taken care of.
Of course.
And so organizing to meet the need is what needs to be done, more than just organizing
For the skill.
well, even organizing for the protest part, because at the end of that, people are still in these communities that are in need, and you have the tools. You may not have started the process, but you need to start the process, because that's what they're going to ask. Once it's no longer the thing to go out and be in the community in that manner, or even if it's continued, people need help. They need the address, they need the community service, they even need the Pathfinders, not the Pathfinders that are parading and marching. That looks good. We're talking the ones that are teaching the skill sets, the honors and the things, like, in other words, showing the community how to plant, because they learned how to plant. So
Fundamentally, I take the view that history belongs to those people who do something.
yeah.
Right now, there are somewhere between 6 and 8 billion people on planet Earth, and there are only a few of them that are known. And the difference between being anonymous and being known, the difference between having a role in history and just being an observer in history, is that fundamentally, functionally, on some level, you have to actually do something. And the modern age, perhaps because of the technology, perhaps because of the environment, perhaps because of the mindset, people have become observers of what is happening.
Yes.
And it's happening to us. And so the idea that you would choose to not participate in something that is happening to you, it indicates a very, very unique and special set of values. And for me, those values are not good values. I was taught that you start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And for a lot of people, that is a starting point that may not be as impressive as they want it to be. It may indicate resources that are not as vast as they want to be. And it may indicate a time that's not necessarily ideal for whatever it is that has to be done. But when I observe the church of my youth, I don't see any of those things, and I am fully aware of the robustness of the systems that this institution has created. I am well aware of the organization and the level of strategic planning and those sorts of things. The institution belongs to the people who belong to it. And so if the corporate decision is, hey, we're going to sit this one out because we got our own internal problems, that's your business. But once this moment passes, if you choose to stay on the sidelines in this moment, what will happen, in my view, is down the line, you lose a lot of credibility when you say, we're here for the community, because it's like, well, when the community was in dire need of what you could provide, you sat in the pew.
And that's a good point. So you're saying, I will say it, this is my perspective, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is being called out, but I would say if it's going to be called out, it must do what it is built to do.
What it says it does.
And what it says it does, not what others, because it says it does these things, like you said. It says it reaches out. It says it does community service. It says these
Let me
things.
be even more specific.
Yes.
I follow the happenings in the church tangentially. It's not something I obsess over. But one of the things that I have a fundamental understanding of is that Adventism has divided itself. It is administratively divided into two separate entities.
Yes.
There are regional conferences and there are state conferences, and they serve different groups of people. Frankly, I don't think this is an area where the state conferences are expecting or expected to really step in. But the regional Seventh-day Adventist Church has always put at the center of its ministry the people who are a part of the black community. So when you come to a time where the black community nationally is in crisis, if this is what you do, then do it.
Then do it.
You know? And if it's not, that's fine. Just understand that when we get ready to, to talk about the community titans and the community, entities that are important and stuff like that, okay, if you don't want to be in the game, that's fine. You can sit on the sideline. But we'll remember that. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end, you're going to look back and say, okay, who made this possible and who stood in the way and who just, sat on the sidelines. It would be different if you had a position that said, hey, we sit on the sidelines.
Yes.
I use, for example, the Jehovah's Witness faith.
Yes.
Right? The Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't get involved in this stuff.
No.
And they never have, and that's who they are.
Yes,
and
it's understood.
And it's understood, and you respect them at that way. That has never been Adventism's call. Adventism has always, regional Adventism has always taken the position, hey, we'll go out here and pitch a tent, and we're going to talk these people into coming, and when they get here, we're going to offer them a buffet of services that has the capability to take them from poverty to the middle class and removing a lot of drama from their lives.
Yes. That's through education, that's through health services, that's through, and when we say education, we're talking school, private, grade school up to college, but we're also talking about education in the areas of health, managing your money, because it's not just one aspect of the life, because you receive funds, you work, but what should you do? What can you do with it? How can you manage it better? It's called stewardship, being a good steward. So yes, these
and
are
it's a
all things.
life system.
It's a life system.
You're
Definitely.
offering people a way to live their lives.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, that's the product.
And then also for those who did not, if their parents did not attend school, but they begin and they attend school, when I say attend college, then in turn the grandchildren attend, and that now it becomes a legacy of those who are college educated.
Sure.
On whatever level, whether they're teachers, nurses, doctors, lawyers, or even just business people. I mean, it could be.
Even at the primary level.
Yes.
I mean, I cannot speak to the education system in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I haven't looked at the numbers like that. What I can comfortably say is that when I observe education across the country, a lot of communities are really struggling to identify ways to make their education systems more effective. And a lot of parents are having the experience of, you sent your kid out the door for 12 years to go down to a school, and then, when we get to this point where, you're supposed to get your cap and gown and everything, and we sit down and we do a genuine assessment of your skill set. And we look at what the world requires for you to move forward. We see that a lot of these systems are not doing an effective job of transforming, kids from being uninformed about the world to being indoctrinated into the systems that make the world work. You need to understand numbers. You need to understand basic science and basic geology and how the language works and how we think about things and stuff like that. And a lot of these systems are incapable of doing so because they are focusing on other problems. Well, Adventism has traditionally offered an alternative to that. And it is an alternative that is peopled by expert professional people. They are educated, they are trained, they are certified, they are registered, they have curriculum, they have, and so when you have this capability, I don't know what they're doing at the Double Rock Baptist Church. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what resources they can connect to, they can have access to. That's beyond my worldview. It's something I can learn, but when I walk into this sanctuary, I understand what I'm walking into here. The question is, do the people sitting in the pews?
And unfortunately, the message is lost, or it has been lost over time, because it wasn't preached or taught consistently, and it was as things are, as they say, passed down from the elders to the others. So individuals know that there are schools and colleges, universities that have the name Seventh-day Adventist, but they don't understand the connection it has to them, or they to it.
Sure.
They see a hospital that has the name not far from here, that has a name of Seventh-day Adventist, but yet they don't know the connection of it. Is it, what is its connection? What is its connection? We hear you talk about or professing this idea of health and healthy living and healthy lifestyle, but does all this connect? And because there's been that disconnect, individuals, I believe, if they were fully educated, would demand that the system give them those things. Mainly is because that's what, like you said, it says this is what we do.
Right.
Then you find out, oh, we hadn't been doing that. Well, why we haven't been doing it? I could have benefited. Others could have been benefiting. The community around this sanctuary could benefit from it. And whether they are proselytized, because that's the ultimate idea for it, their lives will be better. And they will know, and they will send others to say, that place changed my life and the lives of those around me. It affected me. And as we even said, one of the things that historically in the communities, individuals who were call porters had the modern slang term is street cred. Sure. They had a level of street cred that went all the way back to our childhood, that they could walk in the dangerous neighborhoods and get the proverbial pass, as they say, from people who would not let others pass because they did something or that impacted their families, their mother, their grandmother, the books that they read, the stories that they told, that they heard in their childhood. It may not have immediately impacted them to cause them to accept the religion, but they said, I enjoy that. And if you're part of that, then you are somebody I respect. When you go into their community, I say there, you go into the community and you not just tell somebody something, but you are also there to help. You say, hey, if you have need, come here, no cost, services provided. Oh, okay. Then the next time around, they know those people did this. I didn't need it, but my relative needed it, and they were benefited.
Even at cost.
Yes.
Right? Because one of the notions is fascinating, is that we don't think about services and capabilities from a capitalist standpoint.
Okay.
Right? Now you're running hospitals and you're charging people to come in and get medical care.
Yes.
Right? You're selling food. You're selling books by the millions. You're selling all sorts of accessories and things. But then when it comes to something like, education, you're thinking, okay, how can we educate these 8 kids that sit in the pew? Rather than looking out at something like the Dallas Metroplex and saying, hey, as a national proposition, we have this education system that has this capability. How do we leverage it? It's not a challenge that I'm in any position to issue to the church. It is an observation that from the outside I make based on what I'm seeing as I'm going through these various communities, and you're seeing the huge gaps in between what people need and what people have. And you're saying, okay, fine, you know, we're operating under an ideology that says that some private entity must provide these things for you since the government is getting out of that business. Okay, that's fine. That's a choice that the voters and the legislators and the administrators and the bureaucrats make. But on the ground, if that's the way it's going to function, that means the people who have the ability have even more of a responsibility to get in the game.
Yes.
That's when you start to look at entities like the Black Seventh-day Adventist Church, right? Like, where is it in this community thing? Is it just a house of spiritual ideology where a person can come to get a point of view, and as long as they agree with that point of view, they can become part of a community? Or is it actually a tool to help make a stronger community around it where it sits?
Okay.
I can't answer that question, but it is absolutely a fair and a necessary question for the people who are a part of this institution to think about. Because morally, you have an obligation to not just believe, but to live in that belief.
Yes.
To actually actively carry out that belief. It means nothing that I tell you I don't believe that a man should lie if I lie.
Yes.
It means nothing.
It does.
If I tell you that I believe that a man shouldn't cheat and I'm cheating, that belief doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
It's just some words that I say. Similarly, if you say we're here to reach out to all these people and to do all these things, and you have all the stuff, you have all the capability, and you're not doing it, you're not spared from that because you're a large institution, right? You have to wear that. You have to stand on that reputation ultimately.
Yes.
And if I were to issue any sort of an observational challenge, it would simply be to say to these members in these churches that you have a tremendous amount of capacity and a tremendous amount of capability. And you're kind of sitting on those things in a lot of cases. I can't speak specifically to this congregation or that congregation because I'm moving around the country and I'm seeing what's happening all around the country. There's a tremendous amount of capacity, there's a tremendous amount of capability that is going unused for reasons that no one is articulating.
So, I'm sitting here thinking and realizing that as you use the words of being on the sideline, that I will say even myself, knowing the tools and resources that are at my disposal within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I have not fully utilized. So therefore, I'm not even trying to put a square peg in a round hole. I'm simply not even, because one, we can identify that doesn't fit, but it's what is, like you said, utilizing the various resources right here in the community I live in, and right here that are literally at the fingertips, that say some who would live more remotely don't have. And when I'm saying remotely, I'm saying even in the United States, if you lived further out of the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, you don't have some of the resources, the hospital and that, but all of these resources are here. And like you said, the question is how to leverage it for the community, because ultimately, if we say that we are here for the betterment of mankind, then if we're sitting on the sideline and not doing anything, it would be the ideal position for someone to be in if they were, and I'm using this proverbially, they're working for, as we say, the adversary. In other words, the devil, he doesn't make us do anything. But if he said, my best move is to have them do nothing while the city burns, then for them to be active, helping those who are being affected by it. That makes sense.
Sure.
And then we're in no better position. we're actually, as you were saying, the community will remember that, and they'll say, when we were struggling, when we needed the help, and you had all these resources, you didn't come to help. Not because you were commissioned not to, you just didn't. It wasn't your, it's not in the commission to not help. This is why it has been counseled in the writings of Ellen White that the church, the health message is, as I said, the right hand to the gospel, because it will open up a door that someone says, I don't want to hear your religious point of view, but then you say, but I can help you with, from a health standpoint. Okay, I want to hear about that. Then I may listen to this, whether, but the initial phase is your physical body and needing help is a critical, because that's immediate. And then now, well, talk to my mom, or hey, come here. I got a person who needs what you showed me, but I don't remember what you told me, but I knew it worked.
Right.
I knew that you explained how in health or in eating and this. So I need you to tell these individuals so that they can benefit like I did. And so definitely. So ultimately, in your travels, you would say that what you know about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, it could leverage what it has to be a asset in what's going on in the world today, and yet it's not being. Would that be? Could I say that?
That's fair.
That's fair to
but
say.
I would paint a larger vision of it.
Okay.
I don't say this often publicly, and it is, in fact, I don't think I will. What I will say is this. I will say that Adventism is one of the rare black entities. Regional Adventism is one of the rare black entities that has the capability of self-governance.
Okay.
You don't have to always be focusing on how hard you're governing yourself, but the fact that you can gives you access to abilities that have much, much wider implications.
Okay.
And one of the problems that is nationally facing the community is a vacuum of people who are observing the situation strategically.
Okay.
You can call them leaders, you can call them whatever you want to, but there's a lack of people who are observing the threats and the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities, not so much from a theological standpoint, but from a very practical standpoint. When you open the congregation up and 100 people sit down, those 100 people are real. They have children, they have dietary concerns, they have health concerns, they have housing concerns, they have repair concerns, and they're real people. And the question is, you've opened the door and you've let these 100 people sit down and you say they're members or whatever. First and foremost, are you meeting their needs?
Okay.
Right? If your vision does not stretch beyond the walls, okay, that's fine. How about inside the walls? How many of your people are paying money to someone else for something that you have the capability to do as an institution? And once you start looking at how much serving of each other is going undone, then you start looking outside the wall and you start realizing that these are problems that are barely getting a dent put in them. Basic things. Food.
Yes.
There's a lot of hungry people out here.
Yes.
Healthcare. Basic stuff. If you checked blood pressure in every community, in the community around you every week, you would save lives. Right? That's how dire these problems are.
Yes.
Education. Disaster relief and disaster planning. Right?
Yes.
People that get burned out in a fire, people that get hurt in a tornado. And these are capabilities that are built up over, at this point, decades, right? There's as many policies and plans that you can pull off the shelf as there are at the Pentagon or somewhere else. One of the frequent things that I hear is that, and I don't challenge it, is that the reason why this happened is because we lost a generation of people.
Okay.
And the church in particular has a generation of people that walked outside. I'm part of it, that left.
Yes.
And it may very well be that it is the fault of people like me that left, that the church isn't in this different place. And I think that you can argue the chicken and egg of it forever and ever and ever and ever. The question is, are there partnerships? Are there ways for the church and the community, in this case, to do a better job of collaborating? Because the community is at a point of crisis,
Yes.
and the church is specifically designed to function best in crisis.
Yes, it
And so it's a weird thing to not put together. If you want to take your ball and go home, that's your right. But again, we have to come back to, but you said that who you were was this other thing. And so, there's a point at which it does become an identity issue.
So and I'd have to look it up, but from memory, there's a scripture text that many quote, and I've even quoted, that says that individuals will be called out where they'll say, basically why they're not in heaven or why they don't get to go is they'll say, I did these things in the community. I fed, I clothed, I healed, I prophesied, I did all these things. And it says, but you did not know me in Christ. But right now we're seeing that individuals aren't even doing those things to
make the claim.
To make the claim. And yet they could, but they're not even making the claim. So that is an indictment on the church or on the members, because when I say church, I'm talking about the members. It's on both. But because the church is made up of individuals, they can, by its using the term governance and its structure, can decide as a congregation, a fellowship, to say, this will be what we identify as, and we will go, because they're the ones who have to have the buy-in. So if they say it, even if the pastor who is the leader of an individual church that is not their direction, most aren't going to, when they recognize that forward push, they don't get in front of it to stop it, because they can reap the benefit for lack of a return. But again, if they're not encouraging the members, teaching the members, or pushing forth that as a I don't know the word is the agenda, or as a move, then the as they say, the church will only go as high as its leadership. So therefore, if the leaders aren't thinking that, so that's where, like when you said it's a both, if they're not thinking it in those, then they're not going to be out there in the community in the manner in which they should be, with all of the resources that they have. So also I wanted to touch base on something else you said, and then is you said about the generation that has left. I believe to a degree that generation of individuals that have left, there was a vacuum of knowledge and information, but it didn't mean that things shouldn't have been done. But I think what happens is the impression that is left on the generations behind it by a generation. Because as an example, I remember when I was at a particular school, and I looked up to the older young people. And so they said, this is our tradition. These are the things that we do. Some agreed and disagreed, but ultimately it was the thing that was done, meaning you go out into the community and get canned goods to give to others. You collected it from those who had to give to those who didn't. So then it was part, and because the older ones did it, you as a younger person would want to do it. You followed in their footsteps, and so forth and different. But when, like you said, there's all of a sudden this big, massive vacuum of people who are not there, the other ones didn't see that. They saw older people, much older than them, doing it. So it was just like, well, when I get that age, I'll do it. But they didn't see someone who's a few years older, who because we generally only are looking 5, when you're young, you're looking 5, no more than 10 years older than yourself. So someone who, if you're 5 years old, you're looking at a 10-year-old and you're saying, what are they doing? You know, or you're looking at a 15-year-old and what are they doing? But you're not looking at a 35-year-old and saying
Right.
what they're doing.
Right.
That's yeah.
It's
that's
out of your
Out of your
dimension.
dimension. So therefore, when they're not seeing that, then in turn, they're not going to replicate it. Now, some will say, well, it's they still, but again, we are as humans, we see something and then we follow it, especially if it's good and it gives us a good, you know.
But, and not to put too fine a point on it, but that's the purpose of the institution itself.
Yes.
The institution's job is to hold on to and to perpetuate the value,
Yes.
right? Because we understand that, you know, people are going to forget and this and that and the other thing.
Yeah.
The institution stands there as a rock-solid guardian of what the institution believes,
Yes.
no matter what it is.
Yes.
And if the institution is built sturdy enough and strong enough, you should be able to come back 500 years later and that institution will still be promoting those values. What is missing is an aware, I'm not going to call it an awareness, an acceptance of what the level of crisis is.
Okay.
You have to think that for me, an atheist, who's had my own spiritual journey that started in a sanctuary much like this, and it has gone all around the world and through all sorts of different religious traditions, for me to come back here and say, hey, look, this is a situation that requires your awareness and your attention. What I hope that it signals to you is some level of the severity of the crisis. This is one of the most potentially fragile periods of time in a long time.
In a long time.
I think that anyone observing it will reach that conclusion.
Yes.
And I understand that the denomination has an eschatology that every time things gets bad, points people toward, points people toward prophecy and the eventual, celestial return of Jesus. And I have no reason to challenge that. People hold that as their faith,
Yes.
and I don't know.
Yeah.
What I do know is that crisis comes and goes sometimes. And it is a unique type of privilege to say, well, this is just the end times, so I'm going to take my ball and go home. Right? I'm going to just close my eyes and wait for Jesus to come. Because if this ain't it, then you're sleeping through this crisis where you could be helping people.
Okay.
And so if you do that as an article of faith, I'm not the guy to judge you for it. I'm simply the guy to observe that the problem itself is not shrinking and it's growing. And there's an alarming silence from, the carpenters that could help
Okay.
put that back together. That's the extent of my challenge.
Okay.
That's the extent of how far I would be willing to go to say, like, hey, but it is absolutely a call to some kind of action.
Yes.
It is dereliction to have capability in a time of crisis and let it sit on the sidelines. It's dereliction. It is immoral. And at some point, the institutions that stand for morality have to be called into account for their absence in its,
Yes.
in its being lived out.
Yes.
And so that's the appeal
Okay.
to people who listen to conversations like this,
Yes.
right? I don't have anything for you about your theology. Your theology is an intramural sparring match as far as I'm concerned. If this congregation is like others, I'm sure there are people here who disagree with each other theologically about some particular issue of arcane SDA theology. And I'm sure that this church probably holds a slightly different theological view than the church down the street and around the corner that likes a different kind of music and a different kind of whatever. And I'm sure that this conference has its differences theologically with conferences in other parts of the world. The difference is not really what I'm here to focus on, because in spite of those differences, the two members in here, you can get both of them to vote that, you know, we're going to put pads on the seat. You know, and you can get both of these churches to agree that we're going to trade choirs and basketball teams for this week so we can both benefit from that. And you can get these two conferences to team up on an academy, and everybody send their kids there even though, you know, you don't get along. It has to be bigger than just you.
Yes.
Like, that's why you joined a global organization. You know what I mean? And so it's got to be bigger than just you. The question is, as an entity, what is this thing capable of? You know? And as an outsider, you wonder, like, doesn't anybody ever get curious and just turn it on and floor it just to see what it can do? You know? It's a very, very cautious, silent. I go years without ever hearing anything about Adventists that I don't go seek out. Think about that.
I've paused for silence only because that is, like you said, I'm learning a lot about what it is that I myself need to, in prayer, seek out and say, what is my role in this, and what more can I do? In the movie Schindler's List, as we begin to close, there is a pivotal scene that challenges me, and that's where Schindler asked the question. He's being taken away, and he is no longer able to set individuals free or to barter for their freedom.
Okay.
Through his different items. Like he had these different things he would barter for their freedom. And he had a watch on, and he's going away. And it's a moving scene because he said, how many more people could this expensive watch, or, you know, the watch he had on, could have saved?
Right.
How many more could this ring or this? Because at that moment, at the end of it, he could no longer keep individuals from going to the concentration camps and that. But he asked this about, and I say that is because my belief system and my understanding of the Bible and events says that there's a point in time where there's an end. So the question I have that'll be asked of me, and I ask myself now as I look at this, is what did I do up until that end?
Right.
And like you said, if I'm just speaking and talking and not going about the work that I said that I know to be done, and as I'm led to do by the Holy Spirit, then in turn, I'm not doing what I professed to do. So I might as well took my ball and went home, and not because I'm not even being a cheerleader, or
Right.
I'm not even cheering from one side or the other. I'm literally just sitting and spectating with my mouth closed, or proverbially speaking, I'm not really saying anything that's being heard.
Sure.
And actions definitely speak louder than words. So it's more than and I believe that I'm called to go out and meet those who are in need and meet the need. I would rather put my head down and go forward and to meet the needs that people have, and to see them smile and show appreciation, or even if they don't, but I know that their need was met, than any other thing, if that makes sense. So definitely. Closing thoughts?
Closing thought is very simple. Perhaps I am a stranger to you. Perhaps I'm coming from outside the walls, and therefore my voice does not resonate the same as someone who comes from inside the walls. That's all fair. At the end of the day, there is a thing called truth. And the question is, do the words comport with truth or not?
Okay.
If they do, you have to deal with them, because truth is immutable.
Yes.
And if what I'm saying is true, it's not going to come down to a question of whether you agree with my ideology or whether you arrive at it from the point of view that I do. It has to do with the fact that it's truth. And this challenge is not an indictment of people's intent.
Yes.
A lot of times people believe that what they have to offer is so insignificant that they're just not going to put it in the pot. And what I'm saying to you is that to the last person, to the last book, to the last page, to the last paragraph, to the last word, to the last letter, you got to live. And you have to live in accordance with what you are saying that you are. And if heaven is the thing that motivates you, because I am shameless in my bribery, if heaven is the thing that motivates you, if that's the thing that you're aiming for, this is the greatest opportunity space to get to heaven by works in the history of ever. And so if that's what motivates you, now's the time to punch your ticket. If there are other ideologies that drive you, I'm not here to get to that. I'm here to say, find the thing that allows you to come off of the fence and get into the lived experience happening around you, because what you have is vibranium. And hold your leaders at every level and in every space accountable to that as an identity. There's a reason why you have religious liberty. It's not just an abstract concept. This is how things get done.
Yes.
Got to get out and do them.
What comes to mind is the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. There is labor to do, there's work to be done, but there are few in that are doing it. And because I want to be obedient in that which I say and the Lord that I serve, then it is for me to go out and be a laborer, because the need is great. And so now I am saying that I will, moving forward, become active, but active in that which I have already known and have the skill set, not being active in a manner that I don't know.
Right.
So so that way I can be a laborer among because there's much work to be done, plenty of work to be done.
I am amazed at how much there is to be done. Like, and whether you do it spiritually, morally, however, you know what I'm saying? I am amazed. Like, people are hungry. Yes. Whether you give them a plate and a sermon, or a plate and a book, or a plate and a pamphlet, or or a plate and a movie ticket, or a plate and a pass to the strip club, right? The underlying thing is that person is hungry.
Yes.
And the job is to see to it that they get fed.
Get that fed. So, and you highlighted something, because those of us who profess to be Christians and follow the book, the Bible, we want to get there first, because someone else will come with the food, the plate and the strip club pass, or the movie pass, or the whatever that we're saying will be morally degraded. Yet, if we're not involved and we're not bringing the plate of food and the pamphlet or we're not giving them options even. They're saying plate of food, okay, and then something,
right?
So definitely, and then for me to stand and say that's wrong, but yet I'm not bringing the plate of food and something. Then in turn, I'm not bringing the plate of food in, like you said, the pamphlet.
Look, man,
So,
your
yes.
kid can be a Pathfinder or a Crip or both. The question is, which one of those affiliations is going to best reflect their values? Yeah. And you get a say. But if you are not competing with those organizations for the mind and the intellect and the time and the effort of your kid, well,
as they say, the dog that you feed is a dog that's going to live. So the one of the two. So if you're not feeding them, and that analogy holds so strong because we have, in commonality, we have friends that were Pathfinders at the same time we were Pathfinders with us, who became Crips.
Who became Crips.
And unfortunately, because of that, they lost their life.
They lost their lives.
And
Right.
they're not here today. Good people.
Good people, solid people. And that's that
Raised in the
generational
church.
thing.
Yes.
And it's like you have to fight for what's yours, always. And this is a legacy. Some other time, maybe we'll talk about it historically. There's a legacy here that, as an outsider, I see going away.
Yeah.
And when you observe something like that, it's telling.
All right, with that, I want to thank you for your time. We will close. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for a moment to conversate. I pray that those who listened in will learn, but most important, they will act. They will move forward. They will move forward in the power of the Holy Spirit. They will move forward because they were called to move forward. And they will not sit idly by because, again, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. We ask this in your holy and precious name.